You are listening to the Becoming the Wealthy You podcast with Jermaine Foley. If you're a woman who makes good money in your career or business, but you're not building wealth like you want to, then you're in the right place. In this podcast, you'll learn how to stop overspending, break free from the cycle of debt, save lots of cash, and become the wealthy woman you were born to be. Let's dive in. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Okay, last week, I introduced the 7 spending patterns that quietly keep many of us stuck, and that was episode 168. And if you listened to that episode, you probably heard at least one of them and thought, oh yeah, that is definitely me. Well, today we're going to kick things off with 2 of the most common patterns that I see, and we're going to dive deeper into the boredom buyer and the relief seeker. Now, what's interesting about both of these patterns is that they show up when we're trying to escape a feeling or a negative, uncomfortable emotion. For the boredom buyer, the feeling is usually obviously boredom, right? But for the relief seeker, it might be stress, it could be frustration, it could be overwhelm, or simply just mental fatigue. But either way, what's happening underneath is something that I talk about a lot in coaching, and it's called buffering. Buffering happens when we use something outside of ourselves to change how we feel emotionally. So instead of experiencing boredom, we scroll, we could eat, we could overdrink, we can do all sorts of things instead of experiencing something. So I want you to think of you, like you're here, and maybe you're experiencing something, maybe sadness or anger or frustration. And instead of figuring out where that is coming from, you mask it with eating, drinking, spending, or something else. That is what buffering is. So buffering is when you do something that kind of puts a cushion in between whatever emotion you're feeling and you. So it's like, I don't want to feel this, let me go eat something. I don't want to feel this, let me go buy something. I don't want to feel this, give me a glass of wine. That is what buffering is. So instead of experiencing boredom, we scroll. Instead of sitting with frustration, we buy something new. Instead of allowing stress to exist, we look for something that gives us a quick hit of dopamine, which in turn gives us pleasure. But it's not the real pleasure that we definitely want. It's false pleasure. It's pleasure that only feels good momentarily, and it usually is accompanied by negative consequences on the back end. And some of you may be thinking, Jermaine, what's wrong with that? Why would I want to feel stress? Why would I want to feel boredom? Why would I want to feel frustration? We're going to talk about this a little later. But the point of life is not to be happy all the time. Okay. And when we think that we're supposed to feel good all the time, that we're never supposed to experience negative emotions, that is when we have a life that we don't love. That is when we have less money than we want. If we feel like every time I feel a negative emotion, I need to go shopping, I need to buy something, you are never going to be able to build wealth. And you can look at this in other instances. I mentioned overeating. If every time you feel a negative emotion, you eat something, guess what's going to happen? You're going to be overweight. You're going to have maybe some metabolic concerns. What if every time you felt stress, you had to drink a glass of wine or something? What will happen? You might get cirrhosis of the liver, right? You might be hungover the next day. You may have some other health consequences. So whenever we look for stuff outside of us to make us feel better, we are setting ourselves up to not have our best lives. Because the truth of life is that you're not supposed to be happy all the time, right? You definitely want to have a good life, but when something sad happens, guess what? We want to be sad. If someone does something that makes you angry, guess what? It's okay to feel anger. It's okay to feel bored sometimes. Sometimes those emotions are there to teach us something. But if we're always spending over them, eating over them, or drinking over them, we're never going to get the lesson that those things are there for. And again, we'll get a little deeper into this as I go along, but I want you to know that escaping your life with buffering is not a way to have a more expansive life. It's actually a way that makes your life a little less enjoyable. Because yes, you get those quick hits of dopamine that feels good in the moment, but what happens on the back end? You don't have enough money to do the things that really matter to you. You're constantly worried about money all the time. You're constantly wondering, where did all your money go? You're always stressing about your credit card debt. You keep telling yourself that you should be further along financially. So yeah, it felt good in the moment to shop over whatever you were dealing with, but think about all the other moments that you're dealing with, the consequences and the aftermath of those decisions. So that is why learning these patterns and becoming aware of them and identifying them can be life-changing. And so, like I said, today we're dealing with the boredom buyer and the relief seeker. These are two of the most common reasons why we overspend. It's something about boredom that makes us feel like, I can't sit with this, right? It's something about stress and anger and any other negative emotion that makes us feel like, I gotta shop over this. I have to drink over this. I have to eat over this. And for many of us, it's the shopping, right? Because this podcast is about money. I talk a lot about overspending. Why? Because that was my problem. And it's the issue that a lot of my clients are dealing with and they're overcoming. And it's beautiful to see. And I know it's something that a lot of you struggle with as well. So with all of that in mind, let's go ahead and dive into the first pattern, which is the boredom buyer. Now, this is when spending becomes something you do because your brain is looking for stimulation. And boredom can show up in multiple ways. But in my Stop Overspending course that I have, and if you're interested in that course, you can go to jermainefoley.com/SOS. That is my DIY course. You can do it yourself, where I help you to stop overspending. And we dig deep into reasons why you overspend and strategies to stop. And one of the things we talk about a lot in that course is boredom spending. And so there are two types of boredom spending: acute boredom and chronic boredom. Let's talk about acute boredom first. This is that boredom that finds you. It's the kind of boredom that just shows up in the moment. Maybe you're early for something, you're in between appointments, or you're waiting somewhere and you have time to kill. And suddenly your brain is like, okay, I need something to do. And for most of us, we like to shop, we like to spend. So of course, what we're going to do is go into a store, we're going to browse someplace nearby, and very likely we're just going to buy something. That's the way we kill time. That's the way we fill up that space. And depending on where you are, the environment that you're in gives you that opportunity. If there's a Marshall's nearby or a mall nearby, you can easily just run in there and kill some time. And most of the time, we don't come out empty-handed. We have purchased something. And listen, this can happen all the time at airports, especially bigger ones like the Chicago O'Hare Airport. Oh my gosh, I was there recently, right before the holidays, and I had time before my flight, and I wandered into one of the stores and I tried on this coat. The woman that was there, the saleswoman, kept telling me how beautiful it was. To make a long story short, I didn't end up buying anything because honestly, that coat was not for me. It didn't look good on me at all. But looking back, that was a perfect example of boredom buying. I had time to kill before my flight. I was bored and my brain was looking for stimulation, and shopping was right there. And here's the thing about this. This doesn't happen consciously. Your brain doesn't say, hey, I'm bored, let's go shopping. That's not what it does. It happens unconsciously and you just do it. But once you start noticing it, you can realize how often it happens, right? Remember, awareness is always the first level of change. Once you're aware, like, oh, whenever I have time to kill, whenever I have time between appointments, whenever I'm out and about and I really don't have anything else on my schedule between, appointments or something like that, that's when I go and I buy things. Then you can start being aware of that and deciding if you want to continue to do it or not. Now let's look at version 2 of the boredom buyer. And this is more around chronic boredom, boredom that seems to always be there. And this can show up at home. Maybe it's after work. Maybe it's once the kids go to sleep. Maybe it shows up on the weekends. Maybe you're just sitting on the couch or in bed and your brain is looking for something to do. And you might find yourself doing this more than just once a week. This has just become a routine where you're finding yourself bored. And so instead of exploring why you're bored all the time, where this boredom is coming from, you shop over it. You open Amazon or Target or some other random shopping app. Why? Not because you need something to do, but because you're bored. And sometimes this version of boredom is a little deeper. Oftentimes, boredom is just boredom. It just comes upon you, right? And that's more of the acute type of boredom. But if it is constantly happening, it could be a signal that something else is missing. Maybe you're craving more fulfillment. Maybe there's something you've been avoiding. Maybe you have a business idea, but you're procrastinating on it. Maybe you want to be in a relationship, but you're scared to put yourself out there. Maybe you want to have more community involvement, but you don't know where to start. Maybe you are ready for a bigger opportunity when it comes to your career. Or maybe, like I said, you want to start a business, but you're procrastinating. And the way that you can get away with ignoring what's really happening underneath is that you shop over it, you mask it. But again, what happens whenever you buffer, whenever you try to escape any negative emotion? Whatever was causing that boredom is still there once the high of the buy comes down, right? And you end up still bored, but now even more financially frustrated because you're spending money on stuff you didn't need to cope with boredom. Now, sometimes the solution isn't something big like that. Sometimes it's just having other things to do with your time. So for instance, I had a client who had a long commute to work and she never knew what the traffic was going to be like. So she usually arrived to work 30 to 40 minutes early. And there was a Target right around the corner. So that's what she did most days. She just went into Target to browse, and that became her habit. If she had 20 or 30 minutes before her shift, she would just go into the store and wander. But once we identified that as the trigger, she started to keep things in her car, like a book, a small activity, a crossword puzzle, to occupy her time if she got to work early. So instead of automatically going into Target, she had other options. And just noticing the pattern just interrupted it all. I had another client who was an engineer and she loved her job, but she had a lot of time to kill in the afternoon. And she really wanted to be in a relationship. But because she wasn't in the relationship or even pursuing, trying to find someone, she filled her time with shopping. But once we got to the root cause of the boredom, hey, I really want to be in a relationship, she started putting herself out there and she found someone. And instead of shopping, she was able to start spending time with the person who she really wanted in her life. So again, instead of buffering, just masking those feelings, you can get to the bottom of them. And when you do, then that's when not only your finances can change, but your life can change as well. Okay, so the second pattern that we're going to dive into today is the relief seeker. So this one shows up when spending becomes a way to take the edge off. Maybe you had a long, frustrating day, a stressful meeting, a long week. You're mentally exhausted, and your brain is just like, I need something. Let's see what's on Nordstrom. Let's just escape for a moment. It just needs something that's going to make this moment feel a little bit better. So buying something, even something small, and browsing online can really take the edge off. Again, the item itself usually isn't the point. It's the feeling. It's the purchase that gives your brain a moment of relief that you're looking for. And it works. But remember, it's just temporarily. It only works for a moment. It doesn't solve the underlying problem of why you're mentally exhausted, why you're always stressed out, why you're always frustrated. It doesn't solve that. So the original stress or frustration is still there. And sometimes there's, again, now an additional financial consequence. Why? Because maybe you put stuff on your credit card and now it's the end of the month and you're looking at the balance and you're like, how is my balance so high? Right? So now not only are you dealing with the underlying emotions, but now you're adding financial stress on top of that. Maybe you're dipping into savings or maybe you're just using your cash that you were going to do something else with, but now you're spending it to cope with your emotions. That's the problem with these types of patterns. If there were no financial consequences, then maybe we could just let it go, right? But there are. And when we can understand that, oh, there's more to this, then we allow ourselves to become more aware of it, and then we can free ourselves from it. Because both the boredom buyer and the relief seekers are examples, again, of buffering. They're ways we try to avoid or escape our emotions, especially the negative ones. But the truth is, and I hinted at this earlier, life is not meant to be good all the time. There's this coaching concept that I teach my clients. It's called life is 50-50. 50% positive emotions and 50% negative. If you could embrace that and say, okay, life is supposed to be 50% amazing and 50% not so amazing. 50% happy, 50% not happy. If you could just make peace with that, then when you are experiencing something like boredom or frustration or anger, you won't rush to fix it. You will just be like, okay, this is the part of life that is not so great right now. I don't need to shop over it. Maybe this is here to teach me something. Maybe I just need to process this. Maybe I just need to let this process through my body. And if I do that, then I can get to the other side of it. But if I'm trying to spend over it, it's not going to fix whatever it is I'm dealing with. So if you can embrace 50-50, then that means that boredom will happen because it's supposed to happen. Maybe, again, it's there to teach you something, or maybe it's there to help you to understand that it's okay not to be stimulated all the time. Stress will happen. Why? Because we're humans and we're supposed to be stressed out sometimes. Frustration will happen because it's supposed to. And when we come to realize that every negative emotion doesn't need to be fixed immediately, then we start making more intentional decisions, including more intentional financial decisions. And our life gets better and better and better because instead of spending over our boredom, we get to the root cause of it, or we come up with ways to stimulate ourselves that doesn't involve spending money. And then guess what's going to happen? You're not going to go deep in debt. You're not going to keep finding yourself in the credit card debt cycle because you keep putting stuff on your credit card. You're going to see your savings increase. It's going to be tens of thousands of dollars in your high yield savings account. Your 401k and IRA is going to be compounding and compounding. Why? Because you're putting money in there because you're not spending it to mask boredom or frustration. And you know that your future is being taken care of. So you can stop thinking about that. You can stop feeling like you should be further along. You can stop worrying about money all the time. You can have peace when it comes to your finances. You can feel like, oh my gosh, I know exactly where my money is going. There's a meme that I love. Like, you can forget it's payday. You can get paid on a Friday and be like, oh my gosh, I got paid yesterday because it's Saturday now. Like, you're not waiting for that next paycheck. You're in a position where you have money to do the things that are important to you, like travel, like helping your kids through whatever they need to deal with, like whatever it is for you, you have money for that. Why? Because you're not using your finances to change your emotional state. It is not your money's job to make you feel better. That is your job. And when you can grab a hold of that concept, then wealth building will become inevitable. So here's something I want you to think about this week. Which one of these spending patterns show up for you more? Is it the boredom buyer or the relief seeker? Do you notice yourself spending when you have time to kill or when you're trying to take the edge off of a stressful moment, a frustrating day, or just mental exhaustion? Like, which one is it for you? Just start noticing when these spending patterns show up. Because awareness, I keep saying it, is the first step to change. It's not the only step, but it is the first step. Because if you don't know you're doing something, how can you change it? So here's a simple practice for this week and beyond. Start paying attention to not just what you're buying, but what you're feeling right before you buy it. That moment, right before the purchase, can tell you everything you need to know about why you're buying what you're about to buy. And next week, we're going to look at 2 patterns that show up in a very different kind of moment. Not when you're bored, not when you're stressed out, but when life is actually going very well. This is very interesting. I once had a client who was like, Jermaine, I do not spend when I'm bored. I go to sleep when I'm bored. I spend when I'm excited. So we're going to dive into that next week. We're going to talk about the experience enhancer and the rewarder, and how spending can quietly expand when you're celebrating or enjoying something. And that's what we're dealing with next week. And I can't wait to chat with you all about it. Remember, if you have friends that can benefit from this series that we're in, please invite them to the show. We drop new episodes every single Tuesday. I would love to have them as new listeners. And if you want help with this, you know what to do. You can go to jermainefoley.com/consult. Let's hop on Zoom and let's get to the bottom of why you're overspending and how that is derailing you from building the wealth that you truly deserve to have. I would love to meet you on Zoom. Okay, I hope you have a great week. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Hey, if money is the one area of life you just can't seem to figure out, even though you make good money, you're not alone. That's why you're invited to book a complimentary one-to-one money consultation with me so that we can figure out how to solve your biggest money challenges. To sign up, simply go to jermainefoley.com/consult or check out the show notes. Hope to meet you soon.